tuning in to Local News Live, a production of AOC Community Media in partnership with the Acadiana Advocate. Every Monday through Friday on Cypress Street Radio, AOC Channel 1, I believe, and of course our YouTube station over at AOC Community Media on YouTube. We bring you the news as reported by the Advocate and read by our wonderful volunteer team of newsreaders, people like the very dedicated, the very hardworking, the very I'm trying to think of the last word, but I've lost it, Bruce. I've lost it this morning. Handsome. There you go. The very handsome Bruce Cohen joins us tons of mornings to read the news. He's so dedicated to reading the news, and he really does his due diligence, checking out the news, making sure he has all the resources. And we sure do appreciate his hard work on the news and his dedication to reading it well. Good morning, Bruce.
Good morning, Matt. Thank you so much for that wonderful intro. I appreciate it very much. I couldn't do any of that, any of the readings without your help. So I really tip my hat off to you and everybody else involved, but mainly you. So thank you so much for all your help.
Thank you, buddy. I'm going to go listen as your biggest fan on Cypress Street Radio.
Well, thank you, my man. I really appreciate that. Well, that's Matt, my main man at the helming the tech aspect of bringing you the news this morning to Acadiana. So good morning, Acadiana. This is Local News Live for today, December 2nd, 2020. And of course, we're going to start off with a coronavirus news article. It's the latest. Acadiana Hospital is getting slammed by the crisis. This time, no one is sending the Calvary, by Ben Myers, staff writer. Acadiana's fall health care crisis has arrived on schedule about 3 weeks after noticeable increases in new coronavirus infections. Skip down and get back. Emergency rooms are filled with patients needing regular hospital beds, with emergency medical technicians tending to patients for hours before bed frees up. Soon they will be freeing patients to hospitals in other parts of the state, wherever there is room. The logjam works in the other direction too. On Tuesday, there were only a dozen available intensive care beds in the Severn Parish region, which is home to more than, I was drinking some coffee prior to the broadcast, and it's doing something to my throat, but okay, so we'll continue. Which is home to more than 600,000 people. Yes, some patients remained in intensive care because they had nowhere else to go. Washington Lafayette General Staff on Tuesday needed to find regular beds for 11 formerly critical patients who have received coverage, who have recovered enough for non-intensive care, according to spokesperson Patricia Thompson. Hospitals are scrambling to expand intensive care units, facing challenges unlike those in previous COVID-19 case spikes. For one thing, intensive care capacity is a measure of staffing as well as I'm sorry, folks. I'm on a different computer this morning, so it's a little different getting through the news articles, so please bear with me. For one thing, intensive care capacity is a measure of staffing as well as bed counts, and more nurses are needing to expand, but temporary help is harder to find now that almost every state is experiencing a severe surge at the same time. We had nurses that came to us throughout the country to help support us, said Thompson, referring to Southwest Louisiana's devastating summer surge. This time, no one is sending the Calvary. For another thing, demand for intensive care is higher in fall and winter than in warmer times, meaning hospitals have answered their phase surge plans at a quicker pace. Our Lady of Lourdes Regional Medical Center has just begun the third stage of its surge plan, which will roughly double its number of intensive care beds from 24 to about 48. This is the first time in the pandemic that Lourdes has gone to its third stage. COVID-19 patients and now taking up fewer beds than in the summer. About 30% now, compared with 50% during the summer peak, according to Chief Medical Officer Henry Kaufman. Kaufman said LUS will staff the expansion by reassigning nurses who normally work elective procedures, which will be stalled, to intensive care. LUS has a fourth surge stage as well, but staffing for that will be a challenge, Kaufman said. COVID-19 hospitalizations over a rolling 2-week period had more than doubled for 12 straight days in the Acadiana area and region as of November 30th, when there were 220 inpatients. That was a 129% increase over the 2-week period that ended November 16th. The rate of increase is comparable with the one in the first half of July, was culminated in a peak of 304 COVID-19 hospitalizations across the region. About half of the COVID-19 patients were at LUS General, which saw its caseloads jump from 13 to 107 in November. LUS COVID-19 caseload quadrupled in 2 weeks. Both systems are holding new patients in emergency rooms while searching for beds. As many as 20 patients are waiting in ERs at any time, forcing ambulances to wait for space to free up before heading out to another call, said Charles Burnell, medical director for Acadian Ambulance. It's almost like a little mini hospital bed for a while, Burnell said. We function as a healthcare provider in that environment, just basically waiting and making sure nothing bad happens until they can get into a regular hospital bed. Elsewhere in Louisiana, Acadian is being forced to transport patients to facilities that are hours away from their homes, Burnell said. That has not happened yet in Acadiana, Burnell said, but he expects that it will soon. Right now, we are having those issues in other states, but Louisiana is unique, Burnell said, noting that Acadian also operates in Texas, Mississippi, and Tennessee. Whether Acadiana's fall COVID-19 hospitalization spike exceeds the summer, one will likely depend on whether the Thanksgiving gatherings yield another bump in case counts. The November case surge occurred in sync with the aftermath of Halloween, but recent daily case counts are showing signs of leveling off. At the same time, daily case and test reporting have been erratic since Thanksgiving, making it difficult to identify a trend line. Weekly data of test reports are more reliable for tracking the virus's spread, but those reports are released on a 7-day lag. The next one is due on Wednesday, which will cover the period leading to the day before Thanksgiving. In other words, the effects of Thanksgiving will not be fully realized until well into the month, as healthcare providers bear for the effects of the Christmas and New Year's holidays. We don't think it's going to get better anytime soon, Kaufman said at a panel discussion in Carrico on Tuesday. I'm extremely concerned about where this pandemic is going to leave us once we reach the peak point. Campaign reaches closing days. A judge at Thomas vying to be city marshal by Claire Taylor, staff writer. Lafayette's next city marshal will be a veteran law enforcement officer who dedicated most of his adult life to police work in Lafayette Parish. Voters will decide Saturday between Kip Judice and Reggie Thomas to serve as the next city marshal. Judice, a Republican, and Thomas, no party affiliation, emerged from a 4-man race in November as the top vote getters. Judice, who came in second in 2014 behind Brian Pope, led the field with 44% of the vote, followed by Thomas with 26%. Currently, the police chief of Doosan, Judice retired from the Lafayette Parish Sheriff's Office after 30 years and was defeated in the 2014 race for city marshal by Pope, who was later convicted of felony malfeasance in office and is serving a jail sentence. Judice has served as Doosan police chief since May 2015. Thomas retired from the Lafayette Police Department in June after Lafayette Parish Mayor President Josh Guillory said he was eliminating his position of deputy chief, a position created for him by former Lafayette Parish Mayor President Joe Robideau, in which he served for 3 years. Thomas served as interim police chief for 11 months during a search for a permanent chief. He was unable to seek the job because he did not have a bachelor's degree, which he has since obtained. Judice tells us 5 years plus as Duson's police chief is one reason he is better qualified to be city marshal. He's a proven leader, Judice said, implementing changes that made Duson a safer community. One of his priorities will be transparency, Judice said, to be achieved by placing the city marshal's office checkbook online for all to see. He also wants to use text messages to remind people of court dates. Thomas said during his 3 years as deputy chief, he oversaw the entire Lafayette Police Department with 289 sworn police officers compared with only 6 officers in the Tucson Police Department and 25 in the marshal's office. In addition, Thomas, who has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and graduated from the FBI's National Academy, said he is committed to the city of Lafayette, having lived and worked there in the city for 30 years. At the police department, he started the Community Relations Committee and community walks to improve relations between the department and residents in problem neighborhoods. He wanted to continue community walks if elected marshal. Lafayette councils will meet to ponder changes to Unified Development Code by Claire Taylor, staff writer. The controversial Lafayette United Development Code may soon be reinvented and renamed. Lafayette City and Parish Councils on Wednesday, today, are expected to introduce ordinances to make changes to the codes and rename it the Lafayette Development Code. The proposed code, which is designed to correct some of the problems and address some complaints with the current code, applies only in Lafayette and unincorporated parts of the parish. One of Lafayette Parish Mayor President Josh Guillory's campaign promises when seeking the office in 2019 was to repeal and replace the United Development Code, which was adopted by a previous administration and was seen by some as constricting commercial and residential development. Shortly after taking office in January, Guillory appointed a 39-person committee representing primarily real estate and development interests to review the code, consider public input, and rewrite the code. Mary Slyman, Director of Planning and Development for Lafayette Consolidated Government, said at a news conference Tuesday, the new development code is designed to make development more efficient and business-friendly. The number one goal was to identify specific UDC regulations that negatively impacted development and to help our staff create measures that are more pro-development, she said, while still implementing our comprehensive plan called Plan Lafayette. Planning and development staff reviewed more than 130 comments and proposed new regulations for the committee, conducted 3 public meetings, and considered feedback in drafting the new code, Slyman said. One of the most significant changes, she said, is the ability to make smart decisions when there are site restraints for specific properties. The administrative privilege ability was added to certain sections of the code to empower LCG to make decisions in a more timely and efficient manner. Parking lot landscaping changes are included in the new plan, Slyman said, following developers who use more creativity in designing parking lots. The new code will encourage developers to retain mature trees rather than replacing them with new unestablished vegetation. The Lafayette Development Code also will include sign regulation changes to allow for pylon signs, 2-post signs, decrease open space requirement for residential and commercial heavy districts, and allow gravel parking in the city under certain conditions, she said. All right, let me read you a couple of public service announcements before we move on back into the news. Vitalant, urgent need for blood donations. Blood and platelet donations often drop during the holiday months as fewer donors are available because of seasonal activities and illnesses. But this year, the outlook is particularly worrisome. With many schools transition to virtual learning and businesses in work-from-home situations, about 1,600 Vitalant blood drives have already been canceled for November and December. Currently, there's an urgent need for O-negative blood, the universal blood type that all patients can receive. O-negative donors can maximize their impact by giving a power red donation. Vitalant encourages donors to make an appointment by visiting vitalant.org, that's vitalant.org, or by calling 877-25-VITAL, that's 877-25-VITAL. And the local Vitalant or Blood Donation Center is located on Bertrand Street, up from Congress in Bertrand. Okay, request for mosquito control now available through Lafayette 311, mosquito prevention and safety. The Lafayette Consolidated Government is increasing mosquito abatement efforts in the parish. An increase in mosquito activity is a common occurrence following a storm event, as we have had many this past year. Citizens noticing an influx of mosquitoes in the area can now use the Lafayette 311 portal to request service. All submitted requests are routed directly to Mosquito Control Services, the mosquito control contractor for the parish. Okay, getting back into our news. Third suspect arrested in Crowley shooting, Advocate staff reports. This is most likely the crime blotter, which appears daily in the Advocate newspaper. A Crowley man was arrested on account of attempted murder in a July shooting that targeted a gathering that included children, police said. Deandra Felix was arrested by the U.S. Marshal Sheriff on 5 counts of attempted second-degree murder and booked into the Acadia Parish Jail. Two additional suspects previously arrested in the July 3rd shooting. Crowley Police Chief Jimmy Broussard said in the statement, shooting happened in a field in the Westwood subdivision. 4 suspects entered the subdivision, openly carried firearms, and opened fire across the field where children were playing near their parents and other adults. The suspect targeted 5 people specifically, injuring 1, Broussard said. In another crime blotter story, a suspect arrested in New Iberia shooting. A suspect has been arrested in a July homicide in New Iberia. Jarrell Colbert, 27, was arrested by the U.S. Marshals Service Violent Offender Task Force on November 24th and booked into the Iberia Parish Jail on account each of second-degree murder, illegal use of weapons, and carrying of a firearm by a convicted felon, New Iberia Police Department spokesman Sergeant Deasha Hughes said in a statement. Colbert is accused in a July 29 shooting in the 900 block of Flynn Circle that killed one man. And continuing with the crime blotter news, the state police probe inmate death. State police are investigating an inmate death in Iberia Parish. Iberia Parish Sheriff's Office requested that troopers investigate the death of a female inmate November 24th. The woman was found unresponsive. Troopers are awaiting the results of an autopsy to determine cause of death, a spokesperson said. And for the last article in the crime blotter this morning, vehicle drives into animal clinic. Several people were injured after a vehicle went inside of an animal clinic in Opelousas. On Tuesday morning, a vehicle backed into the Bellevue Animal Clinic at 5302 Louisiana Highway 82. Several people were trapped inside, according to an official. 3 people were injured and transported to a hospital. Okay, getting back into our news, looking at state news, Cassie says vaccine headed to Louisiana. Pfizer shipping to distribution points by Mark Ballard, Capitol Bureau editor. U.S. Senator Bill Cassidy said Tuesday that COVID-19 vaccines are headed to Louisiana and elsewhere. Pfizer is already shipping the vaccine out. It's on jets flying to locations to begin to be administered. The Baton Rouge Republican told reporters during a news conference about another bipartisan effort to pass emergency aid for people, businesses, and governments suffering economically because of shutdowns and limitations aimed at mitigating the highly infectious coronavirus. 3 pharmaceutical companies have come up with vaccines to stem COVID-19. Vaccine doses by Pfizer, which need to be stored in a super cold environment, are the furthest along. Though not yet clear for distribution by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the New York-based Pfizer began moving vaccines to pre-positioned locations around the country ready for distribution. The different vaccines had different distribution mechanisms, but Pfizer is the first one going out, and it's going out as we speak, Cassidy said. Morrison and Dixon Company, a distributor in Shreveport, is involved, he said, and Cassidy has spoken to hospitals to have the deep freezers that can handle Pfizer's vaccine. The first batch of Pfizer's vaccine should be delivered to hospitals by December 18th. Moderna based in Massachusetts, a COVID-19 vaccine that doesn't require super cool storage. That firm is applying for its emergency use authorization from the FDA that will soon be approved, and they will be shipping out vaccines soon, Cassidy said. A third vaccine has, let's see, I want to get back to that. A third vaccine has been completed by AstraZeneca, based in England, and is just beginning the fast-track process set in place by the Trump administration to get the medicine out quickly. Federal Centers for Disease Control and Prevention voted officially Tuesday on guidelines that recommend frontline workers and nursing home patients to receive the medication first. The CDC expects about 20 million to receive 20 million to receive the shots in 2 weeks, although it will take about 5 months to fully roll out enough vaccine doses to cover the majority of the nation. Ultimately, however, the states will decide who gets vaccinated first. Already in Louisiana, we are getting ready for that distribution, Cassidy said. Cassidy said that nurse, doctors, and healthcare workers who are vaccinated and are treating patients already infected with COVID-19 would help reassure others that the vaccination is safe for the general population to take. I tend to think once a nurse has been vaccinated, tells a friend at a Cub Scout meeting, "Oh, I took the vaccine, don't worry," he said. Cassidy said he will be vaccinated when his turn comes. Earlier in the day, Cassidy and a group from the Republican majority Senate and representatives from the Democratic majority House took another step at trying to get Congress to pass a compromise relief package for those economically harmed during the pandemic. A $908 billion proposal is $4.2 trillion sought by Democrats, but much more than the $500 million that Republicans, just dealing with a new computer this morning, so some issues here. Later Tuesday, U.S. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican from Kentucky, rejected the bipartisan plan forwarded to break the legislative stalemate. "We just don't have time to waste time," McConnell said. "Congress needs to pass a spending bill by December 11th to avoid a government shutdown." House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, a Democrat from California, didn't address the proposal Tuesday. The bipartisan plan would spend $180 billion to add $300 to unemployment checks for 10 weeks and $288 billion for another round of payroll protection for businesses. The proposal also includes $160 billion for local governments suffering from a drop in revenues. Important for Louisiana because we're a sales tax, tourism, and oil and gas royalty-dependent state, and all three of those have been hit, Cassidy said. Cassidy said the plan includes some new money, but the bulk of the $908 billion would come from redirecting unspent money from the original CARES Act. There would be no stimulus checks. This gets out of dug-in positions to reach common ground, Cassidy said. Okay, outbreak tied to Swingers Convention in New Orleans by Matt Sledge and Carly Colith Wells, staff writer. At least 41 swingers who gathered at a New Orleans hotel last month to get intimate in a socially distanced world has tested positive for the coronavirus, and the event organizers now say he wishes the risque meetup had never been held. Infections tied to the 4-day convention at the Central Business District's NOPSI, or NOPSI Hotel, which included erotic balls. It's funny, erotic balls and romps and playrooms at a downtown swingers club have resulted in at least one participant's hospitalization. It's not funny, folks. It's not funny. It's just kind of cracked me up a little bit. If I could go back in time, I would not produce this event again. Organizer Bob Hannaford wrote Friday in a blog post about the Naughty and Nolans event. I wouldn't do it again if I knew what I know now. It weighs on me, and it will continue to weigh on me until everyone is 100% better. Hannaford said the risks associated with the event weren't fully apparent to him in early November when the U.S. was experiencing a surge in cases, but New Orleans seemed to be holding the line. He thought masking, testing ahead of time, and wristbands indicating previous infections will be enough to stem viral spread. But the efforts apparently failed, contributing one small part to the massive surge in recent weeks that's seen more than 100,000 Americans test positive daily. Joshua Michaud, an epidemiologist at the Kaiser Family Foundation, described the Swingers Convention as a metaphor for the U.S. as a whole. We've just grown more complacent, despite the fact that we know that there's more virus circulating now than there ever has been. The news of the outbreak, which became public through Hannaford's blog post, prompted exasperated responses from public health experts. Well, duh, said Susan Hasek, an epidemiology professor at Tulane University. Close personal contact is a very efficient way to spread coronavirus. Text messages about positive test results began rolling in almost as soon as the November 10th to November 14th convention wrapped up, Hannaford said in his blog post. The fallout included a friend of Hannaford's who was hospitalized but has since been released. Hannaford said there may have been more curious or serious cases that he does not know about. The 41 infections confirmed thus far out of roughly 300 attendees include only people who have notified event organizers about their test results, Hannaford said. The infection rate is higher than it appears at first blush because over half of attendees claimed ahead of time that they had already recovered from COVID-19, as Hannaford said, and presumably had some level of immunity. Something infected attendees. In almost every case, they admitted to us that they were super diligent on the first 2 days, Wednesday and Thursday, and then they relaxed a little on Friday, and then they said, F it, it's our last day, and many admitted that their lax effort on that final day is probably why they ended up positive, he wrote. Even as the event was ongoing, social media users questioned why city and state officials allowed it. However, the state fire marshal's office said the organizers' official plans for events like daytime seminars did not violate any state guidelines, nor did they run afoul of stricter local rules, according to Mayor LaToya Cantrell's administration. Governor John Bel Edwards' proclamations cover only businesses, not individuals, and the event organizers pointed to plans for hotel events involving well-distanced chairs and masking requirements, according to Ashley Rodriguez, a spokeswoman for the Fire Marshal's Office, which is in charge of enforcing coronavirus restrictions. So in this instance, the organization and the hotel were responsible for following the existing guidelines as it pertained to activity I'm sorry, I lost my place again. In the meeting rooms that were being utilized, she said, what occurs in private hotel rooms is not part of the proclamation. To be direct, no approval was required from the state level. Inside the hospital itself, or the hotel itself, staffers enforce rules like masking and socially distancing, said its general manager, Joseph Quilio. We've communicated and did everything we needed to do to follow all the guidelines. We can't control what people are doing outside of the hotel and in their guest rooms, but anything in public spaces, we were very diligent, he said. A number of convention events took place off-site at bars in the French Quarter, and some conventioners gathered at a nearby private swingers club after hours. Quilio declined to say whether any hotel employees has since tested positive for the coronavirus. Obviously, it's out there that the meeting took place, but I'm not here to share that information because I want to protect the privacy of all of our guests and associates, he said. Tulane Hassick says she believes the hotel has earned censure for hosting the event, and she worried about employees, although masking should have helped. But she also said many of the convention goers may not have been infectious until after they left New Orleans. She stressed that the Swingers Convention was only one of many events happening across the country contributing to coronavirus spread. There's all sorts of activities that don't necessarily involve sex that can put people face to face for extended periods of time in small numbers, small groups, and may have nothing salacious about it, she said. Hannaford, in a text message, expressed frustration about the media attention. I've seen lots of videos from other conferences held in New Orleans, she said, people not wearing masks, people not social distancing, having live bands, not abiding by the local and state protocols. I don't see anyone chasing them only from those conferences. Indeed, the convention is hardly the first instance of an outbreak linked to a gathering in Louisiana, although the large number of cases in Louisiana has complicated tracing efforts. Louisiana Department of Health says it has tied 508 cases to bars, 238 cases to casinos, 251 cases to restaurants, 66 cases to social events, and 57 cases to weddings. Nevertheless, the Swingers Convention seemed destined to join the Sturgis motorcycle rally in South Dakota in August in terms of notoriety. New Orleans has made its mark here, Michaud said. This is very attention-grabbing and everything, but cases, if those cases of transmissions are not stopped. And reported Katie Reckdale contributed to this report. Okay, it's the half-hour mark, a little past the half-hour mark, so we'll turn to our day in history. Today is Wednesday, December 2nd. It's the 337th day of 2020. There are potentially 29 shopping days left in the year. Today's highlight in history: on December 2nd, 1982, in the first operation of its kind, doctors at the University of Utah Medical Center implanted a permanent artificial heart in the chest of retired dentist Dr. Barney Clark, who lived 112 days with the device. On this date in 1804, Napoleon crowned himself Emperor of the French. In 1816, the first savings bank in the United States, the Philadelphia Savings Fund Society, opened for business. In 1823, President James Monroe outlined his doctrine opposing European expansion in the Western Hemisphere. In 1859, militant abolitionist John Brown was hanged for his raid on Harper's Ferry the previous October. In 1942, an artificially created self-sustaining nuclear chain reaction was demonstrated for the first time at the University of Chicago. In 1954, the U.S. Senate passed 67-22 a resolution condemning Senator Joseph R. McCarthy, Republican from Wisconsin, saying he had acted contrary to senatorial ethics and intended to bring the Senate into dishonor and disrepute. In 1957, the Shippingport Atomic Power Station in Pennsylvania, the first full-scale commercial nuclear facility in the U.S., began operations. The reactor ceased operating in 1982. Also in the state in 1970, the newly created Environmental Protection Agency opened its doors under its first director, William D. Ruckelshaus. In 1980, 4 American churchwomen were raped and slain in El Salvador. 5 National Guardsmen were convicted in the killings. Also in the state in 1993, Colombian drug lord Pablo Escobar was shot to death by security forces in Medellin. In 2000, Al Gore sought a recount in the South Florida, while George W. Bush flatly asserted, "I'm soon to be the president," and met with GOP congressional leaders. In 2016, 36 people died when fire erupted in an illegally converted warehouse in Oakland, California during a dance party. 10 years ago, the House Last story. The House voted 333 to 79 to censure Republican Charles Rangel, or Representative Charles Rangel, Democrat from New York, for financial and fundraising misconduct. It was only the 23rd time that the House had invoked its most serious punishment short of expulsion. 5 years ago, a couple loyal to the Islamic State group opened fire at a holiday banquet for public employees in San Bernardino, California, killing 14 people and wounding 21 others before dying in a shootout with police. 1 year ago, the House impeachment report on President Donald Trump was unveiled behind closed doors for key lawmakers. Montana Governor Steve Bullock ended his Democratic presidential campaign. 1 year ago today, he was the third Western governor to fail to gain traction in the race. And looking at today's birthdays, actor Kathleen Lee Crosby is 76 today. Movie director Penelope Ferris is 75. Country singer John Wesley Riles is 70. Broadcast journalist Dylan Phillips, 66. Country singer Joe Henry is 60 years old today. Rock musician Rick Savage from the group Def Leppard is 60 years old. Actor Arena Sofer is 52. Actor Lucy Liu is 52 today. International Tennis Hall of Famer Monica Seals is 47. Singer Nelly Furtado is 42. Pop singer Britney Spears from the wonderful state of Louisiana is 39 years old today. And NFL quarterback Aaron Rodgers is 37. Looking at the zodiac, Sagittarius, take care of what's going on around you. If you give into someone's persuasive tactics, you will lose sight of what matters. Capricorns, change begins with you. Size up your situation at work and at home and consider how you can improve your life and relationships. Aquarius, speak up and take action. Check out job opportunities and educational pursuits that will encourage a better lifestyle. Don't take a risk with your health or physical well-being. Pisces, take care of matters personally. Someone will lead you down the wrong path if you are insecure or defensive. Do your research, address pending issues and proceed with your plans. Initiate a move or lifestyle change. Pool your funds to reach a common goal. Speak up for positive change. Taurus, the changes you make may not line up with what others want. Don't be afraid to go it alone if you can convince others to get involved in your plans. Once you get things up and running, support will come your way. Gemini, balance and integrity will matter when dealing with partnerships. Speak the truth and you will avoid a misunderstanding. A promise someone makes is likely to be broken. Have a backup plan in place. Cancer, be creative, innovative, and willing to do things differently. Reach out to someone from your past who can inspire you to resurrect an old idea you still want to pursue. Leo, how you deal with others will determine how much you accomplish. Channel energy into work and challenge yourself to go above and beyond the call of duty. Action will lead to positive results. Virgo, my birth sign, aim to make progress, refuse to let uncertainty take control or allow someone to push you down a questionable path. Less talk and more action will help you reach your goal. And finally, Scorpios, a chance to where and how you live looks inviting. Consider how you can use your skills to improve your position. Engage in a conversation with someone heading down a similar path to yours. And the horoscope, as always, is an entertainment feature not based on scientific fact. All right, folks, looking at the funerals in the Acadiana area today. Julie Bach, Holy Cross Catholic Church at 415 Robley Drive in Lafayette at 1 p.m. Sally Bourgeois, Cathedral of the St. John Evangelist in Lafayette at 10 a.m. And Donna Robinson, St. John the Evangelist Catholic Church, 515 Cathedral Street, Lafayette at 10 a.m. Okay, getting back into the news. Supreme Court to consider undoing split jury verdicts. About 1,500 Louisiana convictions hang in the balance by John Zimmerman, staff writer. For Brandon Earls and 900 of his fellow prisoners serving life without parole inside the Louisiana State Penitentiary at Angola, anticipation has been growing for months over a U.S. Supreme Court hearing scheduled for Wednesday morning this morning. Everybody is rooting and anticipating this moment in time, said Earls, 35, who has spent 9 years behind the bars in Angola, convicted of second-degree murder and in 2009 killing in Kenner. It gives a lot of people hope, a lot of people a light in a dark place to have this opportunity. Those life prisoners, most of them with no shot of parole, are among 1,500 inmates statewide who were convicted by divided juries years or decades ago and have exhausted their appeals, according to research by the Promise of Justice Initiative. That means their convictions remain intact despite the High Court's April decision outlawing split jury verdicts and handling new trials to defendants whose convictions by 10-2 or 11-1 juries was still on appeal. The court's 6-3 majority found that the U.S. Constitution never allowed for split jury verdicts in the first place. Justice Neil Gorsuch, an appointee of President Donald Trump, wrote for the majority that no one has been able to make sense of what the Supreme Court did in 1972 when it endorsed split verdicts for state courts, but not federal ones. The April decision in Ramos versus Louisiana swore off that ruling and immediately affected a few hundred recent convictions in Louisiana and Oregon, the only two states that allowed split verdicts. Louisiana was the first to adopt split verdicts at an openly racist convention called mainly to rid Black people from voter rolls. Many more convictions are at stake on Wednesday when the court takes up the case of Tedrick Edwards, who was convicted by a divided jury of aggravated rape, 2 counts of aggravated kidnapping, and 5 counts of armed robbery related to a 2006 crime spree in Baton Rouge. Edwards' attorney, Andre Bellinger, will argue that a misguided decision by the High Court in the Apodaca versus Oregon decision wasn't really precedent at all, despite it having survived for 48 years, because even at that time, it was absurd. Over time, the decision to endorse split verdicts in criminal cases became an increasingly lonely outlier, as the court has sought to squeeze out any distinction between rights that apply to the federal government versus the states. Bellinger called split verdicts a unicorn on the legal landscape, suggesting that the High Court could apply the Ramos decision retroactively without fear that it would compromise other legal precedents. Bellinger and other advocates for retroactivity liken the situation to Gideon versus Wainwright, the 1963 Supreme Court decision that required states to provide free attorneys to criminal defendants who couldn't afford them. The court soon made Gideon retroactive. An analysis by the advocate of nearly 1,000 convictions by split verdicts over 6 years found that the law continues to disparately affect both Black defendants and Black jurors, who are more likely than their white counterparts to cast dissenting votes. The Ramos decision left Earls and others convicted by split juries to wonder if Gorsuch described these split decisions as no verdict at all, why don't they get new trials? Earls said the fact that 2 jurors didn't convict him left him stumped at the defense table. Okay, moving on. New Orleans coronavirus medical facility ceases operations by Sam Carlin, staff writer. While Louisiana's coronavirus cases and hospitalizations continue to surge, Governor John Bel Edwards' administration has largely abandoned what was thought to be the key part of the state's response to the pandemic, a massive medical facility set up at the Ernest N. Memorial Convention Center in New Orleans. After treating 416 patients over nearly 7 months, that facility last month entered what the state calls a warm status, in which the medical facility is no longer operating, but can be ramped back within 72 hours. It discharged its final patients in late October, according to a census count of the facility. The Governor's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness is now auctioning off some of the tents on a government bidding site. Mike Steele, a spokesman for the agency, said the equipment was deemed surplus after the facility was downsized earlier this year. According to documents provided by the agency in response to a public records request, the state racked up $230 million in purchase orders for the facility, from beds to staffing to mass fatality services. But it wasn't immediately clear Tuesday how much the state had paid to date. Officials said no patients died at the convention center under the new warm status. The state expects to pay about $1.7 million in November and December on the skeleton facility, according to the documents. Dr. Joe Cantor, the state's top coronavirus response official, said in an interview that the equipment remains on site at the convention center, which has recently sought to gain back some of the traditional business it lost during the pandemic, given the low number of patients at the facility. The patient count never reached above 4 during October, Cantor said. The state was comfortable winding it down. Even now, as the number of hospitalized patients jumps in Louisiana, putting a strain on hospitals, the health department said it hopes not to reopen the center. That's largely because what hospitals need most, health workers to staff intensive care units, isn't eased by the medical monitoring station at the convention center. Officials hastily put together the convention center facility in April as New Orleans stood at the center of an early national outbreak of the virus. It originally had the capacity to house 1,000 patients. The largest number of patients at the facility at one time was 108 on April 20th, according to figures provided by the health department. Moving on, eviction ban stings some RV park owners in New Orleans by John Zimmerman, staff writer. In normal years, the snowbirds would be rolling into the RV park on Chef Mentor Highway in New Orleans East that Ray Patel has owned for 18 years. These heat-seeking travelers might stay days or weeks, Patel said, joining a few mainstay renters and maybe even a film crew on his gated 62-site lot. Nowadays, though, checking in on vacationers to the Riverboat Travel Park has become a gamble all its own, Patel said. One tenant, a man from Washington State, who paid steady rent for 2 years, decided in April to stop, citing COVID-19 and a moratorium in place by then. Patel said the man hadn't paid since, and worse, he's been vocal about it around the RV park. He's telling others he doesn't have to stay, Patel said. He tells other people they don't have to pay. Why tell somebody else? Another man paid for a day's rent on the 4th of July with a promise to pay for a month up front. He didn't, but he has stuck around, said Patel. He filed eviction notices last month against both RV dwellers, claiming they owed $5,000 of back rent between them. But a New Orleans judge recently postponed the hearings until January 11th, after the expiration of the current federal eviction moratorium directed by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Whether RV parks like Patel's should rightly fall under the CDC moratorium is in theory debatable. RV parks are not referred to explicitly in the CDC directive, which covers tenants of any property leased for residential purposes, including any house, building, mobile home, or land in a mobile home park or similar dwelling. Hotels, motels, and guest houses, on the other hand, aren't governed by the CDC moratorium. Tenants can qualify for eviction relief under the directive by swearing they make less than $99,000 and can't pay full rent due to a substantial loss of income. Patel argued that his RV park doesn't allow permanent residence under municipal zoning law. It's more like a campground, and the courts were misapplying the CDC moratorium to include his business, he argued. That doesn't fly, said Hannah Adams, staff attorney at Southeast Louisiana Legal Services, which represents poor tenants in eviction disputes across the region. The CDC moratorium applies to any residential lease, so it applies to RV parks where tenants lease a spot and/or a trailer, Adams said. Local attorney Richard Barker, who appeared in court with Patel on October 19th, declined to say if the CDC moratorium excludes RV parks, but the way that thing is set up, it's ripe for abuse, he said. He's got people not entitled to the benefits, taking the benefits with impunity, Baker said. He's not a wealthy man. The first tenant was running around the trailer park telling everybody, don't pay your rent, Barker added. It's an RV park. If you check into a hotel, can you say, screw you, I don't have to pay rent? I don't think so. Patel said just 11 of his camper sites were occupied last week. Most years, I'm taking in 20 to 25 campers easy. Others stay at work. 11 years, never had a problem. And the Hollywood movie people, no problem, he said. These days, there's nothing to see in New Orleans, Patel added. If they stop by for a day, I'm lucky. Okay, moving on to the next story, rolling with the punches. Building 5 survives its roller coaster first year by learning to duck and weave and go with it by Robin Miller. When Misty and Brumby Broussard were looking for a spot for their restaurant among a group of numbered buildings tucked beneath the Perkins Road overpass stood number 5. Soon Building 5 Market plus kitchen plus patio was in business at 2805 Callaway Street, and just this month the eatery celebrated its first anniversary. It's been a roller coaster ride of a year, but it's been good for the most part, said Brumby Broussard. We learned that whatever comes at us, we have to duck and weave and go with it, and that's what we did. The lesson came early. Only 4 months after opening, the state closed restaurant dining rooms because of the coronavirus pandemic. We completely pivoted, Broussard said. We changed the day. They said we couldn't have diners in. The next morning, we woke up and set the full menu for the week for meal delivery and pickup. And we called the Office of Alcohol and Tobacco Control and asked how to deliver alcohol. They were awesome. They said, come down and fill out the paperwork, bring a check, and we'll have you delivered by tomorrow afternoon. That's what we did, and that's how we did everything. Even with Governor John Bel Edwards' recent announcement that restaurants had to revert to 50% dining capacity, Building 5 is fully operational. We have basically 5 different businesses under one roof, Broussard said. We have the market in the front where people can walk in and grab a salad and bring it to their office and eat it for lunch. We have a lunch service, a diner service. We have a private party rental, and we have meal deliveries on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Diners can eat inside on the tropical deck or in the private dining room. On an upper deck, they can count boxcars of trains passing only 50 yards away while waiting for a table. The warehouse appeal of the building is what attracted the Broussards to the site. And we knew it would work because the area is so awesome, Broussard said. Misty and I have been doing interior design for years, and we love ripping up walls and adding a wall and seeing the beauty in buildings. And rather than tear this down and start out fresh, we wanted to leave the integrity and take what my landlord has going on here, which is rustic and funky and fun, and make the interior design of this place blend in with the property rather than completely different. My hope is this plan is built around the street right here, said Broussard, pointing to the tree now going through the center of the deck. When we had the investors here, I put a table here and hung out one string of lights from the tree to another tree in the back, and we had them here at dusk. We had storyboards of what it was going to look like along with the menu, and that was it. That rustic appeal carries through to the menu. The most popular items by far are the dinner boards, Broussard said. We basically have 4 dinner boards right now. We just changed 2 of them out to kind of winterize them a little bit. Building 5 also stocks a full bar with popular crafted selections, such as its garden basil martini and its spicy Baja margarita. You can also purchase mixes for each of the market. Brumby Broussard, a New Iberia native, is a graduate of the now closed Baton Rouge Culinary Arts Institute of Louisiana. He worked in the restaurant industry in Dallas before moving to Los Angeles for a job in the movie industry. While working as Julie Roberts' personal assistant on the set of America's Sweethearts, he met Misty an East Texas native who was working in wardrobe. They married, they moved to San Diego to open their furniture store and had two children, now ages 7 and 11. The couple returned to Louisiana so their children could grow up with family. Okay, it's 9:55 currently, according to my clock. So therefore, our audio portion of today's broadcast will stop at our TV stations. But the audio portion can still be heard at our online streaming service, which is Cypress Street Radio. And you can CYPRESS Street Radio. Just go to your browser, put in Cypress Street Radio. The front homepage will come up, click on the play button. Or you can go to our YouTube station, which is AOC Community Media. So continuing gathering traditions for the Ohlmeyers, it would be Thanksgiving with us celebrating family history in costume by George Morris, staff writer. World War II ended 75 years ago, but hours before Thanksgiving at the Doré home in Plaquemine, it was like VJ Day all over again. When 6 Ohlmeyer siblings and their extended family gathered, the youngest members were dressed in military uniforms representing their ancestors who served during the war. Some of the children read about information about what each World War II veteran did and also spoke about those who fought in other military conflicts. It's part of a tradition that makes Thanksgiving more than just turkey dinner, said Hetty Carville, one of the 8 children of Raleigh and Mercedes Ohlmeyer. We did something to honor families from the past the night before Thanksgiving, she said. The idea came several years ago, said Mercedes Doré, one of Carville's sisters. Since many of the siblings have been school teachers, the gatherings are a fun way to teach and reaffirm the family's history. Carville and Doré's living siblings include Carrie Guerrier of New Rose, Gretchen Lovelace of Baton Rouge, Faith Maddox of Plaquemine, Lydia Chopin of Austin, Texas, a brother Raleigh Ohlmeyer Jr. and sister Annalise Martinez are deceased. The tradition began a decade or so ago with a dinner in which they honored the Acadian freedom fighter Joseph Broussard, better known as Beausoleil, who eluded capture and resisted the British when they expelled French-speaking residents of Canada's maritime provinces in the 1750s. Beausoleil eventually turned himself in and later immigrated to Louisiana. The Ohlmeyers are among his descendants. It was just a good way to teach kids about the family, Carville said. That year, the youngest family members dressed in period Acadian attire. It was such a hit that the family started coming up with other themes based on its heritage. That includes German lineage, so that year's party featured German food and the children dressed in lederhosen. They celebrated their Irish heritage. And when oldest sister Lydia Chopin, who lives in Texas, turned 70, they had a 50s party complete with poodle skirts since most of the siblings were born in that decade. The kids loved doing the costumes, said Mercedes Doré, who hosted the party. Every year we have to think of something different. And this year was the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. Last year, the siblings purchased bricks at the National World War II Museum in Raleigh, Ohlmeyer's memory. And the research turned up that his 3 brothers, Charles, Donald, and Harold, also served during the war, as did a number of their in-laws' ancestors. The Wednesday dinner is one of several activities the family has over the holiday weekend. The coronavirus pandemic made this a smaller gathering than in most years, Carville said. We're sad about that, but everybody understands, Doré said. Okay, and finally, I'm going to wrap it up this morning with a sports story. Longtime dream, Raging Cajuns offensive lineman Hudson achieves dream with Saturday's first collegiate start at ULM by Kevin Foote, sports and staff writer for The Advocate. When you beat an in-state rival 70-20 in a conference game, there are many memorable moments that go into that dominant of a victory. Itself, will any player on the UL Raging Cajuns, though, will remember Saturday's game in Monroe much more than redshirt junior offensive lineman David Hudson. Not only did Hudson get his first career collegiate start, he did it in a victory. Not only did the former Lafayette High School standout start for the first time in his 3 years at UL, he was part of one of the program's all-time best offensive performances. Not only did the former walk-on get his first start with Raging Cajuns, He did so lined up at left guard right alongside his longtime buddy Shane Vellot, the Cajuns' redshirt junior center. It was huge, Hudson said. I actually dreamt of that moment all my life. Growing up, my dad was a college football coach, and I always knew I wanted to play football and just dreamt of playing football. The two had sat by side at Cajun games before. Last season, Vellot told the story of running across some old Facebook memories of he and Hudson enjoying a game at Cajun Field during their middle school days. And while they played on the same team the last few seasons and had practiced together at times, Saturday was the first start. It was actually really huge, Hudson said. We talked about it throughout the week when I figured out I was going to get to the start. He was just so happy. He kept encouraging me. He's a great teammate. It was just a huge moment. Vellot was a football and wrestling star at Como, while Hudson went to Lafayette High. They regularly went back and forth on the mat in the heavyweight division, with Hudson's biggest win coming in the Ken Cole finals their senior seasons. According to senior linesman Ken Marks, though, it was much more than just Vellot pulling for Hudson. But giving David a chance to get in there and show what he can do, it's kind of it kind of gave the room some energy, Mark said. Wanted to see him play, and he came out and executed just like we thought he would. UL coach Billy Napier also had faith in Hudson's ability. Unfortunately, Hudson didn't see any action on the field when the Cajuns beat Georgia Southern 2018 at Cajun Field on September 26. It was just a memorable experience, sharing a few stares and laughs from opposite sidelines. And that about wraps it up. I've got a few minutes over our usual time. We are very fortunate to be able to bring you the news in support with the Acadiana Advocate every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. and at a few minutes past the 10 o'clock hour. We appreciate you listening in. If you are interested in becoming a newspaper reader, a volunteer newspaper reader, you can go to our website, AOC Inc., that's AOCINC.org. Pull down the volunteer tab and fill out the form for the volunteer newspaper reader, and Miss Mandy will get in touch with you and set you up. All the readers have been reading from their home studios. Since the pandemic, we can't go into the regular AOC podcast booth, which I miss very much, but hopefully one day soon we will get back to that once like the story said, the vaccines become widely distributed and we can get on with our lives. As always, this is Bruce Cohen, has always been Bruce Cohen. I was safe, healthy, and smart. Please be smart, continue to wear masks, social distance, and to wash your hands, and just take all the protocols and precautions that you need to. And don't go to New Orleans and participate in any convention that deems to be intimate or to be a swinger. That was a crazy story. So be kind to each other, as I always say every morning. Have a great day. We'll see you on the flip-flop. Have a great day.